do you support Congressman Paul Ryan's plan to overhaul Medicare?
I do, and I have from day one. This will save Medicare. It will save the safety net of health care coverage that our esteemed elders in this country need. I am very frustrated with Democrats and with the media trying to spin Paul Ryan's efforts here in trying to save and shore up Medicare, because what's being spun, Chris, is this misconception that he's trying to do away with Medicare. No, what's going to do away with Medicare is if we keep going down the road that we're on, that Obama evidently wants us to go down, because we will have a bankrupt Medicare system. There will be no safety net unless we shore it up, as Paul Ryan is attempting to do.
But, Governor, what about the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office that says if you go ahead with the Ryan plan, and I want to point out, as you well know, that it doesn't start for 10 years. It doesn't affect anyone who's over 55 years of age. But if you go with that plan, which would turn a fee-for-service plan into a voucher system, according to the Congressional Budget Office, it means that going forward, seniors are going to have to pay more out of pocket for their health care.
Well, if we go forward the way that we're going today, as I say, we will be bankrupt. We will have no Medicare system at all. And that's where, again, those in the White House, they need to be honest with the American public and let them know what we're facing here in these very soon to approach coming years. So there's a need for reform, Chris. We have no choice. There has to be changes. We have to remember, too, that Paul Ryan's plan, and I support it because I don't see anything better, more sensible, more fiscally sound out there. So I do support it. His plan, too, remember, as you point out, it doesn't affect anyone who is 55 and older today. So that's another misconception that is out there, perpetuated by the media and by Democrats, making it sound like our esteemed elders today are going to be harmed. They won't be harmed by this plan.
You also address U.S. foreign policy this week in terms of the budget. You said we should consider a quicker drawdown of forces in Afghanistan, and then you said this: with Afghanistan, with Iraq too, and now with Libya, the cost of the war has got to be considered. So the question is, would you pull some of our U.S. forces out of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya because we can't afford to keep them there?
Well, I'd like to talk about each one of those areas specifically, because there are conditions that differ in each area. Take Afghanistan. Conditions certainly have changed even in this last week or two, when President Karzai comes out and acts like the host nation doesn't perhaps want us there, or NATO. NATO, as we help lead NATO, we're so concerned about civilians and making sure that civilian casualties are not part of any kind of a strategy, and yet that kind of gets thrown back in our face, and there is it sounds like a message being sent to America and to NATO today by President Karzai that perhaps we're not wanted there after everything that we have done in Afghanistan, after the billions and billions of dollars that we have spent there to help rebuild their nation and to quash the terrorist cells so that we're protected on our own shores. So conditions have changed there, and we need to reevaluate the timeline that we have for ourselves being in there. Now, I have great faith in Petraeus, and he, with his folks with the boots on the ground and on the front lines, I trust that Petraeus will know of this timeline that makes most sense for America's interests to be met in Afghanistan. Now, in Libya, conditions there, we have to consider that what Congress just passed via this resolution this last week is a good thing. It's a good message to President Obama. He has not been clear about what our mission is in Libya, and that's what the resolution is asking. We're going to be spending billions and billions of dollars there too, with sort of a nebulous, murky mission that's not really being articulated, and that's not fair to the American public. We need to make sure that we know what we are there for, and if it's not explained very concisely and very sensibly, then we don't need to be in Libya, which is turning into a civil war there. We don't need to be intervening.
Just real quickly, back to Afghanistan. I want to move on to some other things, but real quickly on Afghanistan, are you saying that the combination of Karzai criticizing and trying to limit our mission and the cost factor in our U.S. budget, our debt, that we should reconsider our commitment, how long and how and what a footprint we have in Afghanistan?
With putting faith in General Petraeus as he lines out a timeline for the American public to understand, yes, those two factors, Chris, that you mentioned have got to be considered and reevaluated. A, the host nation's ability to understand what it is that we're trying to do for them and with them in their nation, and the cost of war. 3 wars that we're engaged in today, and our country nearing bankruptcy. We have to rethink everything that we're doing with foreign aid and with foreign intervention. We have got to make sure that it's America's interest first being met in each one of these nations. And if there is an opportunity to, say, in Afghanistan, with General Petraeus's guidance, to back out a little bit, perhaps sooner than we had because of these conditions that have changed most recently, then I would support that.
Let's get to your bus trip and to 2012. And I'm going to ask you the question everybody has asked me when they heard you were going to be on the program. What are you up to?
Oh, man, it seems like I've answered this question a million times in the last week, and folks still, I guess, aren't understanding it. At least reporters don't seem to be understanding it. Even your own Shep Smith there on Fox News, he announced the other day that I was on some publicity tour. I wanted to say, Shep, take it one step further. What am I publicizing on this tour? I'm publicizing Americana and our foundation and how important it is that we learn about our past and our challenges and victories throughout American history so that we can successfully proceed forward. Very heady days, rough waters ahead of us, Chris. We need to make sure that we have a strong grasp of our foundational victories so we can move forward. That's what we're highlighting on this bus tour.
I got to ask you real quickly about that, though. You realize that you messed up about Paul Revere, don't you?
You know what? I didn't mess up about Paul Revere. Here's what Paul Revere did. He warned the Americans that the British were coming, and they're going to try to take our arms. So we got to make sure that we were protecting ourselves and shoring up all of our ammunitions and our firearms so that they couldn't take it. But remember that the British had already been there, many soldiers, for 7 years in that area. And part of Paul Revere's ride, and it wasn't just one ride, he was a courier, he was a messenger. Part of his ride was to warn the British that were already there that, hey, you're not going to succeed. You're not going to take American arms. You are not going to beat our own well-armed persons, individual private militia that we have. He did warn the British. And in a shout-out, gotcha type of question that was asked of me, I answered candidly, and I know my American history.
Well, I got to tell you, I wasn't sure entirely before I asked you that question, so I went on Google to make sure that I knew as much, and we both know now. But you know, look, everybody is asking, and I take you at your word that you wanted to celebrate America's history. But obviously, you're a player in the 2012 campaign. Has the response that you got over the last week, has it changed your mind at all as you make the deliberation as to whether or not to run?
It hasn't changed my mind as to whether I want to be a candidate or not, Chris, but the response that I've received along the trail, my family and I, from we the people, from people saying, please, somebody has got to be honest with the public and let Americans understand where our country is headed. These socialized big government takeover type federal government policies that are burdening our economy and really stalling any potential for growth and recovery in America. We've got to stop that agenda. Well, who's leading that agenda? President Obama is. We've got to turn things around in 2012. Whether it's me throwing my name in the hat or just supporting the right candidates, the response has been great confirmation of the need for real positive change in this country. And you've always been really straight with me. After this week, and obviously you got a lot of attention, there was a big response, does it make you lean more towards running? I tell you, the response I haven't interpreted as being about me as a candidate or a potential candidate. It's been about the message, Chris, truly it has. It's been about the desire of the American public to get back to our foundational beliefs, our values, free market enterprise, freedoms for Americans to make our own decisions instead of some elite faraway government making the decision for us. So it's not been about me.
On a spectrum where
the message.